Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the captain. Just gone 12 o'clock noon. Time for update on our progress on this, the sixth and final day at sea, crossing the Atlantic Ocean. So our position at the moment, 40 degrees and 19 minutes north, 67 degrees and 54 minutes west. That places us in a position around 107 nautical miles to the southeast of Nantucket Island in Massachusetts. And overnight we continued our initially west-southwesterly headings down towards New York, skirting the 200-mile economic sensitive area around and off the coast of North America, till around 6:30 this morning, when we crossed the 200-mile limit and entered into the economic area and headed now just north of west, heading up towards the Nantucket traffic separation scheme. We'll enter that around 4 o'clock this afternoon, and we will pass 40 miles south of Nantucket itself at 6 p.m. So the bit that we're passing across at the moment, the southern regions of George's Bank, and that's a large elevated area of the seafloor which lies between Cape Cod in Massachusetts and Cape Sable off Nova Scotia, Cape Sable Island we talked about yesterday. And George's Bank separates the Gulf of Maine from the Atlantic Ocean. So the origin of the name is obscure. There was a map in 1610 known as the Velasco map, which prepared for King James I of England, and that used the name St. George's Bank, which is a common practice when the name of the English patron saint was sprinkled around the English colonised world. But by the 1850s it was known simply as George's Bank. And for over 400 years, George's Bank supported lucrative fisheries for Atlantic cod and halibut. But over time, the bottom trawlers became very efficient, some catching as much cod in 1 hour as a traditional boat caught in a whole season. And the bottom trawlers damaged the seafloor coral and the sponge habitats, and federal fisheries regulations aimed to control this large-scale overfishing to establish future sustainability. So there's now a lot less fishing boats out over George's Bank, and as we said a couple of days ago, the fishing men were pushed further offshore outside the 200-mile exclusive zone, and that's why they ended up over Flemish Cap. So we'll continue along the coast now, heading up towards Nantucket, and then following the traffic separation schemes approaching New York, so we'll be parallel to Fire Island and Long Island, arriving eventually at Ambrose Pilot Station at 3:45 tomorrow morning, and then we will enter Ambrose Channel. Ambrose Channel will take us up towards the Verrazzano Narrows Bridge, and we will pass under there 1 hour later at 04:45 or shortly thereafter, very early in the morning, and the Statue of Liberty will then come into view shortly afterwards, and then between 5:15 and 5:30 we will turn away to starboard just before we reach the Statue of Liberty, and we'll turn to starboard in towards the Buttermilk Channel, running south of Governor's Island, and then we'll turn around and back up the Buttermilk Channel to our berth at Red Hook in Brooklyn, going alongside about 6:30. So for those of you that want to get up in the morning and watch us going under the bridge, it's very early, want to be outside about 4:45 in the morning, but good news, ladies and gentlemen, we have our final hour back on the clocks overnight. 2 o'clock in the morning the clocks will go back, so you get an extra hour's sleep, and so 4:45 doesn't feel quite so early. So that's enough from me, ladies and gentlemen. I'll hand over to Kevin Morrissey.
Thank you very much, Captain, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Since departure from Southampton until noon today, Queen Mary 2 has steamed a total distance of 2,900 miles at an average speed of 21 knots. This leaves a further distance of just 270 nautical miles left to the Ambrose Pilot Station in New York. The ship's heading is 279 degrees, and our current speed is 17 knots. The depth under keel is 250 meters or 825 feet, and the sea temperature is 20 Celsius or 68 Fahrenheit. Due to the high winds, there is a short, moderate westerly swell of up to 2 meters or 6 feet. As the captain was discussing, we are close to Nantucket Island. Nantucket is a tiny, isolated island off of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. It's a summer destination with dune-backed beaches, and it's marked by its unpainted cedar-shingled buildings, many surrounded by manicured privets. The wharves and cobblestone streets of the town of Nantucket are lined with restaurants, high-end boutiques, and steepled churches. The town's whaling museum recounts the island's role as a 19th century whaling hub. During its whaling days, Nantucket was the third largest city in Massachusetts, with a population of 10,000. Only Boston and Salem were larger. From 1881 to 1917, a railroad ran from Steamboat Wharf to Surfside, Tom Nevers, and Sconset. Nantucket has more than 82 miles of beaches. Each year there's a rock run in which teams or some very brave individuals circumnavigate the island. Fortunately, only 52 miles of the 82. Brant Point Lighthouse is the second oldest in America. First constructed in 1746, it was blown down in 1774, burned, and was rebuilt in 1782, burned, and was rebuilt again in 1783. In 1788, Brant Point Light was again destroyed in a storm. The eastern coast of Nantucket was the first place in the U.S. to see the first sunrise of the new millennium. Nantucket's near proximity to the Gulf Stream makes the island 10 degrees warmer in the winter and 10 degrees cooler in the summer than the mainland. The weather at present: overcast skies with breaks of sun, temperatures of 25 Celsius or 77 Fahrenheit, and winds quite high this afternoon, up to 40 knots, which is a force 7 on the Beaufort scale, 34 to 40 knots. And just to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that the port side of deck 7 as well as the forward decks are currently closed due to the high winds, so please do be cautious as you're walking around the open decks. Weather for tonight into tomorrow: the winds will be reducing, and the weather for tomorrow: New York, quite nice but also quite warm. Highs of 32 Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and partly sunny. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been my pleasure to help and assist deliver the captain's noon speech. I hope you've all had a very enjoyable voyage, and I'll leave you with one final quote. I find the great thing in this world is not so much where we stand, as in what direction we are moving. To reach the port of heaven, we must sail sometimes with the wind, and sometimes against it. But we must sail, and not drift, nor lie at anchor. Oliver Wendell Holmes. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all from me. Thank you very much. Enjoy your afternoon on board Queen Mary 2, and I'll now hand you over to the German hostess, Anita.